Hello, welcome to my channel, Stuart the Unrepentant Atheist. This is my weekly slot that I do usually on a Monday evening, UK time, British summer time, around about 11 o'clock in the evening, British summer time. So if you're in America, the time now will be anything between 6 in the evening and maybe 12 midday. If you're in Australia, it's going to be early in the morning. And if you're in Europe, it's going to be around midnight. So I hope that some of you will join me and listen to some of what I've got to say within the next, I don't know, I'll be here for about 1.5 hours. And depending on how many of you actually are going to be with me, and hopefully some of you will join fairly soon. So I'm actually not going to be talking about The Line today at all. Matt Dillahunty was not on over the weekend. And I think it was Seth Andrews, Apologia, Shannon was on. So there were two shows as normal. But I listened to some of the one with Seth Andrews. And I don't know, when Matt's not on, I find that the calls go on a lot longer than they should do. I find that the hosts are probably a little bit too patient sometimes with the callers, too patient. Although obviously with Matt Dillahunty, it can go the other way. He can be too impatient. But with some of the other hosts, it can go on and on and on for quite a long time. So I don't really tend to find it so interesting listening just to some of the other hosts. So I didn't really watch those shows at all, apart from one call. And I don't know, maybe during the week, if I've got nothing better to do, I'll try and catch up with those shows to find out whether there were any really interesting calls. And for anybody who's watching now, perhaps you saw a really interesting call, let me know, and I'll go and have a listen to it if you think it was particularly outstanding and worth listening to. So Marcy, hello. Nice to have you with us in chat. Let's have a look what you've got to say. Matt was getting dental work, I believe. Oh, yes. Matt is getting dental work, and yeah, I don't envy him at all there. I've not had a filling in 30 years. I'm glad to say. I'm really lucky with my teeth. I don't know, just good genetics, I suppose. Drank plenty of milk when I was a child. Got plenty of calcium, and really from about the age of 30, I've had virtually no fillings at all. I don't understand why, because I've got a sweet tooth. I enjoy eating sweet things, but I've had no real dental work in all that time, and I feel for people who do have to have a lot of dental work. I'm not too sure what Matt is having done. He said oral. What did he say? Oral surgery. That actually sounds quite serious. So I don't envy him at all. Believe me. Hopefully he'll be back with us fairly soon. And the fact that he's had a dentist drilling in his mouth, or obviously doing whatever he's doing, won't impact too much on the way he talks. And let's hope that Matt's dentist is nothing like the infamous Christian Zell from the Marathon Man. Don't know if you know who he is, but anyway, let's move on. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about in this episode mainly are comments that people leave on my channel. So obviously I get comments every week, and I've been wondering actually what to use this time for when I come on and do my streaming. And I thought, what if there are no calls I'm interested in? What if no issues really occur on any of the call-in shows? I can't really think of anything else. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I've got people leaving comments on my channel all the time, and I'm actually responding to some of those comments. It might actually be a good thing for me to present some of those comments to you, and that can sort of generate conversation, my replies, and some of the issues which have occurred. So before I do that, though, I watched on Netflix last night. There's only a fleeting reference here to religion, so if I will try and shoehorn something into this show if I really liked it, and there's some fleeting reference to religion, and there was, because I watched Netflix yesterday. I don't usually watch Netflix. I actually unsubscribed about, I don't know, 6 months ago, because I felt that I'd really run out of things to watch, and there was nothing really new coming on. I mean, I like some of the Netflix shows. I love the Squid Game. Um, there was what was the one? Alice in Borderland. I thought was absolutely phenomenal, and there have been others which I've enjoyed, but there have not really been too many which I've enjoyed. Which have really sort of interested me too much. Um, so yeah, I unsubscribed from Netflix 6 months ago, and my partner said to me, "Oh, she's been recommended something called Baby Reindeer on Netflix." And she asked me if I wanted to watch it with her. She's got Netflix, I haven't. So I said, well, she said, "Oh, it's been well recommended." I said, "Oh, okay, fair enough." Yeah, I thought to myself, it'll save me taking you out to the restaurant and spending, I don't know, um, $100 or something like that. Yeah, so why not? Let's stay in. Let's stay in and watch Netflix. So you're not going to believe this. We started watching it at 9 o'clock, and it's a mini series. So there are 7 episodes that are just 30 minutes each. So what's that? 3.5 hours. And we binge watched the whole lot. It was so good. We just watched one after the other, and we actually went to bed at 1:30. And we were up at 7:30 in the morning. So I mean, we slept okay, but yeah, it was an absolutely. I thought it was a fabulous show. It was absolutely riveting right from the opening scenes. I thought it was brilliant. So yeah, but look, I don't want to. Okay, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! If you don't want to know anything about Baby Reindeer because you're going to watch it, then I suggest you tune out now for the next 2 minutes and then tune back in. So yeah, spoiler alert. But the point is, the main character, Donnie, has been basically raped by a man. He's drugged and everything, and he was repeatedly raped by somebody who was grooming him. And he had this unpleasant task in the last episode, I think it was, that he had to go and tell his parents this before somebody else did. And I mean, his father is a really kind of strict sort of person, doesn't take any nonsense, looks like the kind of sort of middle-aged man who, if he heard that his son had been raped, would send him straight out of his house and say, "You must have brought this on yourself. I never want to see you again." He looked like that kind of guy that would not take this sort of news very well, and quite the opposite. Uh, because Donnie said, "Would you think I was less of a man because this has happened to me?" And his father said, "Well, would you think I was less of a man because I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church?" And as soon as he said that, my partner, who's a Christian, said, "Oh, they had to get that in, didn't they? Picking at religion there." But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's only the tip of the iceberg, the abuse that went on in the Roman Catholic Church, and probably is still going on to this day. Because after all, who would guess that a respectable priest, a man of God, should be reliable to leave your children with for Sunday school and Bible classes, etc.? And yet I don't know, we've got thousands, we've got cases still up and coming, we've got compensation claims, etc. Dade Murphy, yes, my partner is a Christian. I mean, what can I do? There are so many lovely women out there who are Christians. I mean, it was possible that I was going to meet one of them one day. I mean, what can you do if if you really like somebody and they don't happen to, they happen to believe in the existence of God and you don't, and you get on in every other way extremely well? What are you supposed to do? And I mean, to be honest, she's more of a cultural Christian. She knows I'm an atheist, and it doesn't really bother her that much. And so I mean, it's very rare to meet somebody you get on well with and that you're attracted to and everything, and to rule out somebody just because they happen to believe something that you don't is absolutely, well, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for other people, but it's never put me off getting into relationships. Actually, to be honest, look, most of the women I've been involved in my life have been Christians. At least half of them have been church-going Christians, despite the fact that I've been an atheist, and it's never really been much of a problem. But having said that, of course, when I'm with her, and when I've been with, my wife was a Christian. She was a Russian Orthodox, and she became more Christian as the marriage progressed. Doesn't say much about me, does it? Yeah, she became more Christian as the marriage progressed. I think partly because we had a child, and she probably thought that by boosting her Christian worship, she would somehow skew uh, the sort of chaos that we've got in the world, sort of bring some order for her son to grow up in and do well and prosper. Of course, I don't believe any of that nonsense. Uh, the Our input into his life was more significant than her prayers or anything else, quite frankly, as it is for anybody, even even Christian parents who really believe. They're praying all the time for their children, but they do a lot to help their children. They don't wait for God to do it. So, okay, let me just, okay, yeah, so I digressed there for a moment. So just coming back to this show, yeah, Baby Reindeer, absolutely brilliant. I mean, Netflix have got some talent writing. I've not really been impressed with very much recently, but they seem to have some talented script writers. Obviously, some people may disagree and think that it was a bit far-fetched and too many cliches. And yeah, I get that. And there was a trans woman in the show, and it's been a bit of a cliche that you're making dramas out of people who've been either abused in childhood or in adulthood. They've got these disturbing pasts that they're trying to come to terms with. Yeah, I know it's all, I know, but this one was really done particularly well. I thought very well cast, and the acting was first rate, and I thought the script writing was very good too. And it also touched on the fact that you've got a lot of people in the world who want to be famous. For example, in this show, we've got a young man who wants to be a comedian. He wants to be a stand-up comic, probably one of the most difficult professions to actually do well in. And I mean, I know what it's like to tell a joke in a crowded room and have absolute stony silence. Yeah, I know what it's like. I'm not a stand-up comic, and I don't regard myself as being good at telling jokes, and that's why I don't tell jokes, because I don't want to hear that deathly silence when I've delivered the punchline. So, um, yeah, um, and it was really interesting to see how he handled this stony silence that happens in a club or a pub when you tell a joke. You've got a big punchline, and it makes absolutely no impact whatsoever. I feel like going to some stand-up comic shows just to sort of experience that. And otherwise, I'm not really that much interested in stand-up comedy. I've watched stand-up comics online, and I'd be one of those who would be absolutely deathly silent when the punchline was delivered. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe if I went, I'd be infected by everybody else laughing. I don't know. Um, okay, so where was I? Okay, so that was Baby Reindeer. Let me move on from there. Yeah, so I would recommend that for anybody who's not seen it. I got through the whole lot. We got through the whole lot in 7 episodes, and there was just one. There was one episode that was a bit disturbing. Where you see him being abused. Yeah, that was sort of unpleasant. But I suppose in the context of the drama, it was sort of necessary to see it. So there was also a lot of there were captions appearing at the end of every episode. If you've been abused, or if you've suffered like this, you can get in contact with whatever, and then there's a telephone number. So I suppose it was doing a social favor. This show wasn't just about getting viewers, it's also doing something which has got social importance. Okay, let me just look at some of your comments. I'm going to move on and start to talk about some of the commentary that's been coming on in my channel. Let's see. Okay. Okay, Michael Bell says, I could possibly deal with the theist partner. In fact, my hubby declares that he is a pagan Catholic, not practicing, but he's not a right-wing idiot. Okay, well, that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think I would struggle to have a relationship with a Muslim woman. Christianity somehow, in the modern form that it's in, it's kind of palatable. I mean, no, it's not that palatable, but it's not so incredibly unpalatable. When I'm in church with her, I find it a bit unpalatable when it gets really preachy, like remember remember your goal. This life on earth is not your goal. The goal is eternal salvation through Jesus Christ. That's something that I find a little bit sort of weird listening to. But mostly in the church, and I go once a week, just to support her. Mostly it's all about love thy neighbor, turn the other cheek, the Good Samaritan, that kind of thing. And there's not really so much on the salvation part of it. Okay, right. Let's move on with some of these comments then that I've been getting on my channel. So I've actually pasted some of them into a Word document. Let's hope that I can bring up the Word document and read it without actually impacting on my live stream. Okay. So yeah, somebody accused me of confirmation bias. Right. I mean, look. Okay. I mean, let me level with you guys. I don't know how many of you are theists, how many are atheists, but one of the ways that some theists, not many, one of the ways that some theists will, I don't know, try to validate their own beliefs, or at least try to defend their own beliefs, is by trying to critique the atheist position, trying to undermine it, which I understand why they do that. Because look, if you've got a belief for which all you've got are like philosophical arguments and, I don't know, God of the gaps, arguments from incredulity, things like the fine-tuning argument, if you've got belief in something so remarkable and so extraordinary as an all-powerful God, and you've got nothing more than these philosophical arguments, which, let's face it, if any of them was solid, if any of them was valid and sound throughout and watertight, this will be Nobel Prize winning stuff. That if somebody ever comes up with an argument that philosophers can spend years picking through, atheist philosophers can't find any fault with a particular philosophical argument, we will all know about it. This won't be an argument for the existence of God, which is only plausible and viable for theists. It's an argument that will be viable and plausible for all people of all faiths. And it depends on how complex it is. But let's imagine that there's a really complex philosophical argument that philosophers spend years picking through, and a symposium of philosophers comes together, atheists, theists alike, and they say, this is so extraordinary, this argument for the existence of God, that we atheist philosophers, we're going to convert to theism. And they get down on their knees and, okay, well, then there are arguments about which God is it, but okay, they at least get down on their knees and they say, yes, we admit we were wrong. Our business is philosophy, and it would be false and disingenuous of us to be professional philosophers and earn a living from philosophy, arguing that philosophy is actually useful, and that if a conclusion is declared to be true, we could not deny it. That now we've got an argument for the existence of God, which, as far as we can see, we spent years analyzing it, is absolutely flawless. And now we've got no choice but to give up our atheism and admit, in fact, that there is a God. Philosophy has proven it. Okay, if we ever get to there, and it will be world news, it really will be. There'll be, I don't know, Nobel Prize for literature, perhaps, or who knows. But it will be news. It really will be big news, not just in philosophy. It will have worldwide significance, I would have thought. I would be very interested. I would then have to spend time going through that argument and understanding it. And if I agreed that all the premises were demonstrably true and that the logical steps were there which led to the conclusion, therefore God exists, I too would be converting to theism, right? So there's no need. In the meantime, I'm not a philosopher. You know, my philosophy is not that bad. I would probably make mistakes here and there, but I know the main arguments for the existence of God in philosophy, and I also know what the weaknesses are, what the flaws, why the premises. We can spend all day going over certain philosophical arguments and talking about the premises and going back and forth with theists. We can spend the rest of eternity doing that. Well, I mean, if you've got an argument where you can spend the whole, you can spend years going backwards and forwards with theists arguing, then clearly this is an argument which is not sufficiently strong. There are bound to be problems with it, but there may yet be an argument presented which hasn't got the same problem. So that back and forth is not necessary because the arguments are so strong, the premises are so evidently true that they can't be refuted. That's what I'm waiting for in the world of philosophy. And if that ever happens, then yeah, I'll convert from atheism to theism. I'll have no choice. Okay, so let me just come to this comment that somebody left. Let's just come to it finally. I'll just read out what he's written. Yeah, so I was critiquing claims for the historical Jesus. Okay, and I was arguing that the New Testament is a theological document and written by evangelists who were trying to get a religion going, and that it wasn't reliable. It wasn't intended to be like a true historical record. It can't be accepted as a true historical record. It's trying to convince people by certain rhetorical means that obviously Jesus existed. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is divine. Jesus was resurrected, did miracles, did healings, etc., etc. But none of this could be taken as historical. And I made this video some time ago, and somebody left a message on my comments as follows: equally plausible is that you have a confirmation bias. As an unrepentant atheist, you definitely would not want the Bible to be true because it means an eternity in hell. Okay, well, let's just think about that for a moment, shall we? I fully admit that when it comes to the God question, I've got a confirmation bias. Okay, I admit that. It's something that I'm aware of, and that when I'm evaluating claims and evidence for or against the existence of God, I'm aware of it. I try to fight with it. I can't be 100% certain that this confirmation bias that I've got, shall we say, against arguments or evidence for the existence of God, is not having some impact on my ability to assess fairly the evidence that's been being presented to me. But all I can do is promise. I think I'm doing my best to be aware of it and try to assess those arguments and evidence fairly. What more can I say than that? I believe that we've all probably got confirmation bias in every single issue and matter that you can think about. I've got confirmation bias for, let me see, I've got confirmation bias for the superior of British plums. British plums, here, I'll show you. Okay, so you know what these are? These are British Victoria plums, and I've got a confirmation bias for these, that there's nothing better than a British plum. I've tried them from other countries, so it's not just, it's not just confirmation bias. It's not just that I'm British and I think British plums are the best, but these are plums grown from a tree in a garden. They're not from a farm. They're not from a shop. And they're just absolutely unbelievable plums. I've got confirmation bias that British plums are the best, and I admit that. I've got some evidence to support it, but I admit also that I could be wrong. But I must say that whether or not British plums are the best plums, the best eating culinary plums, is not really, such a huge issue. And when I say that British plums are the best, I admit that it's my own, probably my own bias towards British fruit, which is feeding into that assessment. But whether or not British plums are the best is of no consequence. It's of no consequence to me. But whether or not Jesus existed and whether or not Jesus was divine and whether or not Jesus is the salvation is a question that really requires a more neutral approach. And so I'm aware of this, how important the question is and how important it is to try at least and set aside any bias that I might have. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I do acknowledge that he's right. I've got confirmation bias, but I would take issue with him where he says that it's equally plausible. So he's saying that I'm saying that it's plausible that a lot of this was made up and fabricated to bring people into the religion. Trying to grow a religion, you need to make it impressive. How do you make it impressive? You create stories as plausible as you possibly can, and you put in a miracle here, a miracle there, healings here and healings there, and then a resurrection to top it all off with lots of wise sayings. And you can make it kind of, you can make it sort of seem true. So what I'm saying is that it's plausible that the evangelists actually fabricated a lot of this stuff. And he's saying that it's just as plausible that my confirmation bias is clouding my judgment on that. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's an equal plausibility. I think it's more plausible that the evangelists invented a lot of stuff, invented a lot of detail to get believers into the religion, than that my own confirmation bias is clouding my judgment on this whole issue. Okay, let me just read some of your comments. Okay, John Lovell says the unphilosophical mind is trapped within the system it uses, unable to deeply understand alternative or competing systems. Well, John Lovell, obviously, I suppose the bulk of people in the world, the bulk of the world's population, have probably very little philosophical knowledge, or I'm not too sure what you mean by unphilosophical mind. Do you mean people who are not kind of trained in critical thinking or aware of how to critically evaluate claims and evidence? I'm not really too sure what you mean there. Let's see. Mighty Sarlacc says, yes, we get it. You love weed. Okay, that's not me. I don't love weed. I've never taken weed. Okay, what's going on here? There's nothing really of any consequence being said. Okay, Michael Bell says, all we have on a historical Jesus is hearsay. Well, is that all we have on the historical Jesus? Just hearsay? In other words, just stories which have been passed down. And it seems that if there was 30 years between when Jesus died and maybe when, I don't know, the Gospel of Mark was written, then there was an oral tradition. There was more than one oral tradition, because there were different traditions on what Jesus meant and his significance. There were the Gnostics, what they believed, the Essenes, and there were different factions, and obviously one of them happened to win out. The one that really dominates Christianity today, the idea that Jesus is the salvation, is the way, the truth, and the life, or the light, and that only those who come through Jesus can actually book a ticket in heaven. That's salvation. And then all we've got apart from that is Josephus, Tacitus, but they're not confirming that any of the miracles really happened. They're just writing about Christians, which is useful because we've got some corroboration that there were lots of Christians around in those days. Okay, let me just read the rest of what he says. Yeah, he claims you definitely would not want the Bible to be true because it means an eternity in hell. I would not say that's true. I mean, that's a really difficult question to answer. Would I want the Bible to be true? Let me just think about that for a moment. How about you guys in chat? You guys who are atheists, do you actively want the Bible to be untrue? That's a good question, actually. I suppose that yeah, maybe that is true of myself, that I don't want the Bible to be true, not because it means an eternity in hell, but just because I think that this whole idea of original sin, salvation, and the dividing off of sinners from non-sinners or believers and non-believers doesn't really seem to me like, if there is a God, that is something that would actually be the order of things. It's really difficult to accept that that would be the case. But I admit that I may be wrong, and that maybe that is the case. As bizarre, as utterly bizarre as it may well be, that may well actually be the case. So yeah, I can kind of admit there that I would not want the Bible to be true, and this probably strengthens my confirmation bias, because if I don't want something to be true, I'm more likely to treat contra evidence against it and put more weight on that than give any credence to evidence supporting the plausibility and the truth of the claims in the New Testament. So yeah, okay, I can admit that, but I still don't think that means that my conclusions, my tentative conclusions about the New Testament, are actually wrong, that I'm not justified in holding these positions. Okay, let me just read some more of what he says. The Bible has been used to find and identify archaeological sites and studied objectively throughout history. Do historical research on Jesus and these New Testament events objectively, and share with actual evidence and facts in your next video. All I see is your opinion so far. Well, that's because of the nature of what's being presented to me. What's being presented to me in terms of evidence for claims is a text, a 2,000-year-old text, and there's nothing really more than that. And yeah, I'm giving my opinion on that text. What else can I do? My opinion is it doesn't meet its burden of proof for the claims that it makes. There's not really much more that I can do than that. So we're kind of at a dead end unless we can find some sort of better evidence, some sort of empirical evidence. I don't really see that I can do much more than give my opinion on the evidence. So he talks about do historical research on Jesus. What historical research? What historical research does he imagine that I could do? Let me just read out my reply. I have no. Okay, here's my reply to this comment. I have no issue with archaeological sites cited in the Bible being confirmed. Yeah, because of course, obviously, we've got Jerusalem in the Bible. We've got Bethlehem. We've got I don't know. We've got Galilee. We've got I don't know, the Garden of Gethsemane. We've got various place names in the New Testament which archaeology has discovered exist. Okay, well, big deal. Jerusalem exists. Well, we've known. There's been plenty of evidence that Jerusalem exists. It's not really such a big deal. I don't know what other archaeological evidence has been uncovered to confirm anything in the New Testament. Not a great deal, I would think. Okay, they've got the Turin shroud, but that's been exposed as a medieval garment, hasn't it, really? Okay, so yeah, so I've got no issue with a lot of the claims in the New Testament that yeah, Jerusalem existed, Bethlehem existed, and all these places, the Sea of Galilee exists. I've got no problem with those claims, and a lot of the other. We know that Pontius Pilate existed, so some of the historical figures, yeah, I mean, we know all that. I've got no problem at all with those claims. So I've said back to him, okay, yeah, so uh, all right, so we acknowledge that there are truths in the New Testament, but that does not make the miracle and other remarkable claims true. Yeah, and then there's the Spider-Man example. We know New York is an actual place, but that does not mean Spider-Man is real. And that's what it comes down to. Just because we've got a book with lots of demonstrably true claims in it. Yeah, so say we've got 50 claims in a book which are true, and there are 51 claims in total in this book. It does not mean that the 51st claim is also going to be true. Each claim has got to be judged on its own merits. Okay, so he's not replied yet. Quite often people don't reply, but other times they do. Okay, let me just look at your comments, and yeah, I'm not going to eat a plum live online, don't worry, but I will have a cup of tea. Okay. Let me just take a quick break and read some of your comments. Okay. Harry Potter is real because it talks about London and King's Cross. Yeah. Well, yeah, you could use that example also. And if you see all the fans queuing at King's Cross at platform, I don't know, what is it, 9 3/4 or something, or I can't remember. You'd almost think that Harry Potter is real. Okay, let's not talk about Harry Potter. Okay, I'm not talking about the Epicurean paradox. I'm not talking about that right now. Okay, let me just move on. So, okay, this one came in. So we often hear theists say, "What's your evidence for Julius Caesar?" Because we say, well, there's very little evidence that Jesus actually existed. Just really one document, the New Testament, and some mentions in historical documents, some of which are supposed to be forgeries, like Josephus. So yeah, I'll just read that out. So the comment is as follows. The comment is as follows. Just a moment, please. Okay, the comment. Is there an empirical proof that Alexander the Great existed? Anybody can write anything, say anything, and show a name in an ancient writing, but still it could be fake news. Does the guy with the beard, I mean, he's talking about Matt, have empirical proof that 65 million years ago an asteroid killed a great part of animal life on Earth? Can he prove that Cleopatra was a female? Okay, let's try and unravel this. You see, this is what happens when you start questioning the historicity of Jesus. Did Jesus exist? Or if Jesus existed, did Jesus do any of these things? Did he say these things? Did he do these miracles? Did he heal people? Was he resurrected? But more specifically, did Jesus exist? Are we justified in questioning the existence of Jesus? Because after all, we've got Julius Caesar, we've got Alexander the Great. What evidence do we really have? We can't go back in a time machine, can we? No, we can't do that. And believe me, if I could go back in a time machine, I would probably want to go back to the year that Jesus was supposedly crucified. And I would want to spend maybe enough time there to find this Jesus figure and to find out what happened to him, who he is. Of course, I wouldn't be able to speak the language. I'd have problems straight away. And in those days, uh, there'd be nobody that could understand my language, English. The the English nation had not been born, and even when the first Anglo-Saxon settlers started establishing what we now call Old English, I mean, Old English is virtually incomprehensible to modern English speakers. So I suppose I would, but let's set that linguistic problem aside. Let's supposing that I could go back in time and I'd learned, I don't know, ancient Hebrew or whatever, and I could ask questions and find out, yeah, of course I would love to go back in time to verify any of this. It would be amazing if I could manage to stay alive in those times to do that thing. So yeah, my reply then to this comment, to these comments about Alexander the Great. Okay, of course, I went and done some research. When people leave comments of this kind, I said, right, what evidence is there for the existence of Alexander the Great? I went and did the research, found out there's a lot of evidence. Let me just read what I wrote. There's a lot of historical evidence and archaeological evidence for the existence of Alexander the Great. Multiple historians from across the ancient world wrote about his military campaigns. There are Babylonian tablets inscribed with accounts of Alexander and his military victories. Yes, so he was being written, he was the most famous military commander of those times. And there were literate scholars in those days. They could inscribe tablets, they had parchments, and they wrote about Alexander. And these are independent sources. The more independent sources you've got talking about the same thing, that's how historians do their job. That's how they unravel whether something is historical or not. And the big problem with the New Testament as a document is that it's all really coming from the same place. I don't regard the four different Gospels as corroborating each other, because I think, as scholars have found out, there was this supposed, they call it Q document, that Mark was drawn on, and that I think two of the other evangelists drew on Mark. And then John's Gospel is kind of different, but incorporates some of the same. So they're all kind of coming from the same place. We need some corroboration from outside of Christianity, and it's just really not coming to us. Okay, so I wrote that down. Plus, I provided a link to the article listing all the historical evidence. Yeah, there's a lot of historical evidence. For Julius Caesar too, there's so much evidence, plus writings of Julius Caesar. Okay, and then about the Cleopatra question. Was Cleopatra a woman or not? I mean, why bring that up? Why ask the question, was Cleopatra a woman? The importance of Cleopatra was not that Cleopatra was a woman or not a woman. The importance of Cleopatra in history is that Cleopatra was ruler of Egypt for a certain amount of time, and the deeds that were done in Cleopatra's name. That's the important thing, not whether she was a woman or not. But let me just read what I've written. As for whether Cleopatra was a woman or not, we do not know. It is not an important historical question, though it is generally assumed she was a woman. I have no problem accepting that Cleopatra may not have been a woman. Yeah, but I mean, I don't really see it as a big question. It's not a remarkable thing for somebody to be a woman or not to be a woman. So I don't really see it as a question. But we do know Cleopatra existed as a historical person and was ruler of Egypt. And that is the important fact, not her sex. That's it, you see. He's kind of, he's going for some stupid, it looks to me like sort of transphobic related point. This is a theist, I believe, from the general tone. And all the questions, all the points there just demonstrate somebody who has got absolutely no idea on historical method and how we determine whether something really happened in history or not. And somebody who's trying to make excuses and be an apologist for the poverty of their own position and beliefs in the historical Jesus and the claims by trying to expose weaknesses in the knowledge that we've got about historical figures. I mean, all I can ever say to people about this is if you go to history department in the library of any university, you'll find books about the ancient world, you'll find books about Cleopatra, you'll find a lot of material on Alexander. You won't find anything about Jesus. Nothing or very little. There might be a little tiny section, the historical Jesus, but which is discussing the question, what do we know about Jesus? Did Jesus exist? And discussing all the problems, like there's so little to go on. How can we make sense of this when historians in modern times are talking about Alexander, his military victories, the significance of them, why he followed certain courses of action, his assassination, and all these different things for which there is plenty of evidence. But with Jesus, a lot of the debate is, okay, well, no, it's not true to say it's not true to say that a lot of the debate is on whether Jesus existed or not. No, the debate tends to be on whether the Gospels are reliable sources and considered historical to the extent that any of the claims that Christians make can be actually considered as being reliable. That's the question. Because really, what Alexander and Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, what they all did in history, I mean, nobody's claiming that they flew on a dragon and conquered countries flying on a fire-breathing dragon. Nobody's claiming that. All the things that they claim, all the claims about them are very plausible. They did military campaigns. They went and they conquered other countries. Well, not Cleopatra, but obviously Alexander and Caesar. So these are not really extraordinary claims. And I understand, though, why theists keep coming back to them, because they haven't really got anything else. They can't support the claims which are made in these books of the Bible, which they consider to be an authority and beyond question. And for them, their belief that these texts have got authority is their evidence. And they don't seem to get it that for atheists, those books have got no kind of authority whatsoever. Okay, so let me just go on and just read the rest of my reply. Okay, so for the asteroid that struck the Earth, I think he's talking about the comet. Okay, so we know the dinosaurs died out. The question is why? We don't really know. As far as I understand, we don't really know, but there are hypotheses. And one of these hypotheses is that a comet struck the Earth with such force of like 1,000 atomic bombs and created such a dust cloud in the atmosphere. Light couldn't get through, plant life died, and herbivores died out because they had nothing to eat. And eventually carnivores had nothing to eat either. All the dinosaurs died out. Yeah, so that's one of the hypotheses. Do we know it for certain? I mean, or do we know it? Is it a fact? No, I don't think it's a fact that this is how the dinosaurs died out. So let me just read what I read. So we're not sure about this. It is one hypothesis about how the dinosaurs died out. It's not a fact. We need more evidence. And then I go on to discuss more generally about epistemology. Okay, so we have good evidence for some claims and not others. That's the thing. We've got all these claims put before us. A big stack of claims, right? A big stack of claims. And we've got to sift through them one at a time. Now, most of the claims that we encounter are non-remarkable. Claims that, I went for a steak dinner last week and I was served pork instead of steak. Okay, I mean, that kind of claim doesn't need any investigation whatsoever. It's a plausible, non-remarkable claim, and whether it's true or not really is of no consequence. It can be accepted as true without any further investigation. Do you agree? Or do you think that we should go out and say, well, prove it? Prove that you went into a steakhouse and you were served pork instead of steak. I want proof. No, it wouldn't be reasonable to do that, because people are telling us things all the time which are plausible, everyday, mundane things, and we would never get anything done if we were continually asking for proof. Or people would just say, I just told you this to make conversation, and but if you don't want to believe it, that's fine with me. I don't want to talk to you anymore, because uh, I really just wanted to tell you this to break the ice and sort of get a conversation going. So yeah, no, most claims can be accepted at face value. Let me just read more. Okay. We have no good evidence for the existence of God or anything supernatural or life after death. Well, I'm still waiting. Now, Christians and a lot of theists will disagree. They will say there's good evidence for the existence of God. Christians will say there's good evidence that Jesus lived, that Jesus was resurrected, that Mary gave birth in the Immaculate Conception. They will say there's good evidence. For them, the good evidence is the Word, is the Bible. Okay, that's good evidence for them. It's not good enough evidence for me. So, and I don't see how it could be good evidence for them. Why give the Bible that status, that it's an authority to such an extent that it's beyond question? Why would you do that? Okay, you would do that because you believe there's a God and you believe that God had some input into that Bible. That's why you do it. Why do you believe there's a God? Well, that's another question. Then we get, look at the birds, look at the trees. Okay, I'm not going down that road. Okay, yeah, so the basic epistemology is, and I don't believe that epistemology, the theory of knowledge, how we can know something, or how we can have a sort of justified true belief. I don't think it needs to be that complicated. I think that I'm going to discuss somebody else who posted something which is tending towards hard solipsism and appeals to certainty, that if certainty isn't possible, then atheists and theists are on the same footing, this kind of thing. But I don't believe that epistemology has got to be such a big deal. So yeah, we've got good evidence for some claims and not for others. This is the thing. How do you decide what is true and what isn't true? You look at the evidence for every claim as it's presented. And it's the person presenting the claim that's got to provide the evidence. They provide the claim, they provide the evidence. I might have claims, and then I've got to provide the evidence too. If I say absolutely there is no God, then I've made an absolute claim there. I've got to provide evidence, but I'm not making that claim. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so we have no good evidence. Me replying again. I'm reading from the internet. We have no good evidence for the existence of God or anything supernatural, life or a life after death. The bottom line is we have good evidence for some claims to be accepted as true. Now, when I say that something can be accepted as true, that's not me asserting 100% certainty. It's me saying that a claim has met its sufficient burden of proof, not to 100% standard. I don't believe such a thing is possible. Well, it may be possible, but apart from certain definitional claims, I think it would be very difficult to get absolute certainty on anything, but we can get a sufficient level. We can put the bar very high below, say that's certainty, say up there. We can put the bar pretty close to it, and we can proportion our belief to the quality of the evidence which is presented. And that's really what my epistemology is. Is that subjective? Yes, and it's subjective for everybody. So I decide where that bar is. That's the thing. I decide where the bar is, and I believe that I can justify where I put the bar, but that's a conversation for another time. Christians set the bar somewhere else. A lot of Christians set the bar in a different place. As William Lane Craig has said, the more amazing, the more beneficial a belief is, the lower the bar should be. He's actually said that. So for Christianity, for him, the bar is actually quite low down because the belief is so attractive. At least he's honest. So for me, I don't care how attractive a belief is. I mean, I've kidded myself and I've convinced myself that I've deluded myself that certain things are true. I've deluded myself that, contrary to the evidence, for example, that when I was a lot younger, shall we say, a particular woman found me attractive. I've deluded myself into that belief because it was such an attractive belief to hold. It fed my fantasies and my imagination and my expectations, but the evidence actually was to the contrary. So, but apart from that, by and large, I mean, with the age that I am now, and I've tried to get all the delusions out of my life and just hold true positions. Again, that's not me saying 100% certainty, but very, very high level of confidence in all the positions that I hold. Okay. The bottom line is we have good evidence for some claims to be accepted as true, but there are other claims which have not met their burden of proof. Religious claims, for example, claims about aliens, the supernatural, and magic. Yeah, and these are the claims I'm interested in. I'm interested in those claims. I'm not interested in mundane, everyday claims. I mean, I'm not even interested in. I mean, somebody might say to me, "Do you believe that man has walked on the moon?" Well, actually, yeah, I do believe that. I do believe there's sufficient evidence to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. But, it's not really something of much consequence. It's not. Well, it's kind of a remarkable claim that a man has set foot on the moon, but I mean, it's also a remarkable claim that there are aircraft that can fly at Mach 4. But we know that the technology is capable of that, and getting to the moon was just a technological challenge. It didn't require any magic or anything like that. Okay, so let me just read some of your comments. I'm running out of steam. I've been going for an hour and my voice is starting to, I've got this feeling that probably within the next 20 minutes I'll wrap things up. Okay, so thank you for all the likes. Thank you for all the comments so far. Thank you for being with me. Let me read some of your comments. Have a quick drink of cold tea first. Earl Grey tea. Okay. Right. Okay, Michael Lee Jam says, I never believed. I have a friend who does. Doesn't matter how much info you show him. He just wants to believe. Yeah, well, okay. It's, I mean, I'm not saying that I envy people who do truly believe, but I mean, if you look at people like Justin Brierley and I don't know, who else is there? William Lane Craig, they've got these kind of super confident Christian smiles, which I suppose I lack. I lack a super confident Christian smile. I suppose if I believed that Jesus was walking beside me every step of the way, I might have the same kind of smile on my face. But I prefer to live in this universe, which I believe is absolutely friendless to humanity and is just a cold void out there with, planets and stars. And there's nobody, I don't believe there's anybody looking out for us or anything like that. I believe that we'll come and go and we should just make the most of the sort of time that we've got on this planet, and that's all there is to it. So a lot of Christians think that's a miserable outlook, and I don't really see it as a miserable outlook because, I mean, I'm still alive, and I suppose while you've got life, there's every reason to sort of feel positive and good. Of course, if I suddenly had a terminal illness and I was going to die in 3 weeks, I suppose my outlook would change very quickly. And I'd be one of those making videos on YouTube saying, I've just been delivered a terminal diagnosis, stage 4 advanced cancer. I've got 3 weeks to live. And finally, I'll be getting 10, 20, 30,000 views a video instead of, 1 or 2,000 views. But I think I'd rather just have a few hundred views a video and, be healthy, which I am. Yeah, I don't know how many of you guys have noticed that there are more and more of these videos of people who have got terminal illnesses and they're documenting it all, and they've got absolutely, like hundreds of thousands of views. And I hate to admit it, I'm not proud of it, but I'm kind of following some of those guys, just checking in now and again with people to see how they're progressing, I suppose, in a way, because I think that if I ever unexpectedly contract such an illness or find out that I've got cancer, I wonder how I would cope with it. I've got no conditions. I've only got one condition, and that's I've got a bit of tinnitus in my left ear, a bit of a hissing sound, which I've had now for a few years. But I can live with that. It's not really a problem. Okay, so let me just read some of your comments. No green tea. No, John Lovell. I'm afraid I don't like green tea. I drink black tea. I've heard that green tea is healthier than black tea, but I tried it once and I didn't really like it. As for coffee, I tend to drink decaf coffee because I've found that I get heart palpitations if I drink too much caffeinated coffee, usually at nighttime. And so, yeah, I try to drink decaf. Okay, Lee Jam, I'm not too sure who you're talking about there. William Lane Craig, maybe. He says he is depressed and is waiting for God's plan for him. I've tried to help. Oh, I see you're talking about your friend, but he won't accept help. He's waiting for God. Well, I don't know. This is the problem. On the one hand, I suppose like a lucky rabbit's foot or Dumbo's lucky feather, religion could be useful. On the other hand, if you're relying on God, if you're relying on prayers and all that kind of thing, then it's not really, for most of the people who are praying out there, nothing is really happening. So I'm surprised they stick with it. I'm not sure that's for. PM me your shipping address. Oh, I'll ship you. I'm in the UK. XE Music. Where are you? And also, what's on the picture? Let's see. Michael Bell, a fellow atheist, had a channel called Dying Out Loud. Oh yeah, wasn't that? Warnock? Dave Warnock. Did he die? I'm not sure. Did he die or is he still alive? Yeah, that was a shame. Okay. Yeah, I've got a calendar. Yeah, well, the thing is, you can't see the other side of my room. I'm a bit of a record collector, and I've got a big line of records. I've got my hi-fi system and everything. I've got family pictures on the other side of the room. I've got more on the other side of the room. And yeah, all I've got is a calendar there. People have commented before that I should put something on that wall. I'm a bit of a minimalist. I tend to, I actually like empty rooms. I used to, when I lived in a house with many rooms before I got married, when I had money, I had a room that was empty. I carpeted it. I painted it sort of off-white, put a nice curtain in it, and that was an empty room, no pictures on the wall, and that was such a peaceful room. I would take a chair and just go and sit in that room. There's really nothing quite like an empty room. I mean, there's a saying that I've heard a saying that I mean, a room can have nothing in it but be full of itself. There's a sort of wisdom to that, which is sort of bordering on a sort of Eastern wisdom. I quite like that, but um, yeah, well, I mean, my room is by no means empty at all. It looks empty on this side, but it's got a lot in it, believe me. But I might take a picture depending on what's on it. What's on it? If it's The Scream by Edward Munch, no, I probably wouldn't take that. Okay. Well, actually, Lee Jam, not just that I've got a calendar, but it's on the right month. I mean, just a few days ago, it was still on March, and I looked at it and I thought, oh God, and I flipped it onto August. So I don't know. I mean, actually, my mum sent me that as a present, and I suppose, well, I don't know. I don't really even use a calendar. Okay. Yeah, maybe sit in front of your record collection. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. Okay, hello, Ace Trades. Good to have you. I'll be gone in about 20 minutes, so, but welcome for that time. Okay, so let me just go on with another comment. All right, so yes, somebody left a comment. Somebody left a comment on my live stream last week. Yeah, so as you know, I had one of my videos deleted. Some of you may well realize I had one of my videos deleted because I used certain words which the bots picked up, and they just deleted my video. I've appealed against it. I'm trying to get it reinstated, but I've got to be careful not to use certain words. One begins with S. The next letter is U, then I, etc. You're not allowed to use that word unless you're an established channel with a big reputation. You're not allowed to use that word. So I didn't use that word. I spoke about something else in connection with COVID, but I didn't really externalize anything controversial from myself. But I talked about a caller who'd spoken to Matt Dillahunty or somebody, I think one of the other hosts, and raised question marks about certain products which were being used. Yeah, so this person left a comment on my channel and said, oh, do you approve of censorship? Okay, this is the talking point, censorship. Yes, I do believe in some censorship. I think that some censorship is necessary. So I'll just say how I replied. And I said, yes, I would like to see channels promoting hatred of women shut down. I mean, douchebags like Andrew Tate, who are self-confessed misogynists, who are spreading hatred against women to disaffected incels and young men who women don't seem to want. I think that this increase in hatred of women, fueled by people like Andrew Tate, is dangerous to women. It puts them in danger. Have I got the statistics to prove it? Have I got the empirical evidence to prove that view? No, but I think it's a fair kind of assessment that if people are stirring up hatred against women, and there's already a problem of violence against women from men, that inciting more hatred against women is only going to make that situation worse. It's not going to make it better. And I think channels that promote hatred of women should be shut down. Now, I don't know whether my video is going to be pulled because I use that phrase. I don't know. If so, I'm going to have to appeal against that as well. Okay, so I said, yes, I think that these particular channels should be shut down. He said, why? And then I just explained what I've just explained. Like, channels which promote racist views, put certain ethnic minorities in danger. And yeah, I do believe that some censorship is necessary. Unfortunately, YouTube are quite good at censoring a lot of these sort of damaging type of channels. YouTube is supposed to be a fairly sort of family-friendly environment, I suppose. So particularly on YouTube. And then he replied, he said that if enough people, he's saying that these views should be left up so that people can question them. People can be skeptical of those points of view. And then he's saying, well, free speech is necessary so we can know what psychos are thinking and believe. Well, where do you draw the line? We've got the dark web, haven't we? Where exactly do you draw that line? We can find out what these people think and believe. If we want to dig around and look around, then we can do that. But the problem with YouTube is that people have got feeds, they've got recommended videos, and you never know what's going to end up in your feed. And you might end up viewing something which to the wrong person, should we say a young male, 19 years old, never had a girlfriend, feels isolated, below average height, addicted video gamer, poor academically, very poor prospects. Somebody looking at the wrong material, it could actually send them into a downward spiral where they start becoming very, very resentful and could lead to something fairly unpleasant. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Lee Jams, so much for free speech. Where is the line drawn? Well, the line is drawn by the line is drawn by, I suppose, YouTube. They decide because it's their platform. And speaking personally, people leave comments on my channel. I very rarely remove comments. And I must admit, I very, very, very rarely see offensive comments. I occasionally do. But something's got to be really offensive for me to remove it. So I suppose that channel owners decide what can be there and what isn't there. Okay, so let me just move on. Okay, so this was from an older video that I did on, I think, epistemology. But anyway, let me just read the comment. The comment is as follows. If a materialist atheist states that all existence is physical in nature, then the materialist atheist has made a positive claim about the nature of reality. If a materialist atheist turns to physical evidence to make their case, they can be fairly accused of making a circular argument. If a materialist atheist turns to non-physical evidence to make their case, they have refuted themselves. Do you make the positive claim that all existence is physical? Fancy asking me that question after saying that. I don't know. It's almost like saying, no, okay, forget that. Okay, I'll just give you what my reply to that is. No, I do not make that claim. There may be some supernatural realm of existence we do not yet know about. I accept that. But for those atheists who claim the material world is all there is, I suggest you chase up those atheists and tell them to prove it. And his reply to me was, fair comment. Okay, well, I mean, obviously, what else can I say? I happen to believe that the material world and the universe is all that exists, but that's not me making an absolute statement that, there definitely is no supernatural realm. I accept that within the limits of what I can detect, the material world does seem to be all there is, but there may be something outside of it. There may be something more that we don't know about. I accept that's the case, and I'm not prepared to adopt the burden of proof and state categorically that there is nothing outside of the material world. So, yeah. Okay. So I've just got a couple of more comments to briefly go through. Yeah, that was me splitting an infinitive. I shouldn't really be doing that. Okay, so I've got a laptop here, which I've had to because it's quite a. Let me just see if I can get this. Okay, here's somebody saying, I can't empirically prove what I ate last week. That didn't mean that I didn't eat anything last week. Now, where is this going? Where do you think this is going? Let me just read that out again. Excuse me a moment. So he says, I can't empirically prove what I ate last week. That didn't mean that I didn't eat anything last week. This seems to be getting at, you can't prove that there's no God, but that doesn't mean there isn't a God. Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. But so what? I mean, whether you ate anything last week or not is not remotely remarkable. And you could actually prove it. If you wanted to prove it, you could prove it. Okay, let me just put my reply. Eating is quite a commonplace thing. It is fair to accept that you did eat without any evidence. If you told me you saw a ghost, that would require some proof, as it is not a commonplace thing. We can't believe in fairies, unicorns, and all sorts of gods just because we can't prove they don't exist. So yeah, I mean, that's really what I think the essence of what he was saying is, that just because I can't prove that I didn't eat something last week doesn't mean that I didn't. He's saying that just because I can't prove, just because you can't prove that there isn't a God doesn't mean that there isn't a God. Okay, then he replied and said, that was just an example. My point is that most human experiences can't be empirically proved to have happened, paranormal or not. Well, he's assuming there that paranormal experiences are real. So he's grouping them all together. So okay, let's take this thing about eating. Can I prove what I ate yesterday? Well, okay, look, I had porridge yesterday with grated apple, cinnamon, and honey in it. Can I prove that to you? No, I can't prove it. However, let's say that tomorrow night I do a live stream, and in the morning I'm going to film myself eating porridge, honey, grated apple, and cinnamon, showing you all the ingredients, what time I eat it. I'm going to find a way of proving the date and the time. And I think you would probably agree, in the evening, I will be able to prove to you, to a sufficient standard of proof, that I did something very unremarkable in that morning and what I ate. So these things are provable. He's saying that you can't prove the majority or most human events. That's not true. I mean, you could prove virtually everything you do in the day by just documenting it, videoing it, and using a timestamp. To a sufficient standard, you can prove it. To a hard solipsis, no, you can't prove it, because it might just be all one big dream. It might just be all one big illusion. But within the context of the world, that seems to manifest before me and which seems to be real, we can prove it to a sufficient standard. And then he says, okay, there are enough anecdotal reports of a lot of phenomenon, in other words, paranormal phenomenon, to at least consider them. Yeah, I've got nothing against considering paranormal phenomena. But for me to accept that they're actually real is going to require some fairly extraordinary evidence. Okay, so let's just see. What else does he say? Well, it's mainly about, he's kind of dancing around saying that, well, you can't prove what you did yesterday. You can't prove this. You can't prove that. It sounds to me like he's trying to say that all claims are equal, because we can't prove, I don't know, what I did at, say, 9 a.m. last Thursday. It somehow legitimizes claims that the paranormal are true. Yeah, but so I just finished off saying, because he's mostly talking about non-remarkable claims when he's saying that you can't prove that you did this, you can't prove that you did that. Okay, I said I'm not interested in non-remarkable claims and whether they can be proven or not. I demonstrated that they can be proven if necessary. Yeah, because he said that these things can't be proven empirically. No, you can prove them. I can prove empirically. I will be able to prove if I film myself and get all the evidence together. I can prove these things. So yeah, so it's remarkable claims I'm interested in. And then I just say that yeah, you can document what you do, and you can gather evidence for what you've done during the day. You can't do anything like that with any supernatural God claims and other remarkable claims. My interest is in proving remarkable claims. Then I ask, do you have any remarkable claims to make or not? Do you believe in any God? So yeah, people will come onto my channel and they'll start saying, "Oh, you atheist, you can't even prove that you drank a cup of tea this morning, and and yet you won't believe paranormal claims. You can't even prove your own claims, mundane everyday claims, and yet you won't believe paranormal claims." Let's start from the beginning. Give me the claim and let's examine the evidence. If you've got paranormal claims, provide them and provide the evidence, and let's discuss whether your claim is viable or not. As for my mundane things that I do in my everyday life, if need be, I'll provide evidence for them. I've got no problem at all with that. Okay. And then I say, you admit that not all experiences can be proof, but some can be. Yes, I accept that. So yeah, he's talking about personal experiences, religious experiences. I say, so how do you know which are proof and which are not? How do you know your experiences are not fabrications of the mind? Give me some specific examples. No reply yet. Okay. And then we've got, okay, then I'll just summarize. And then we had another theist who said that he's a convinced theist, and he's criticizing atheists for their epistemology, saying that they atheists don't even know what evidence is. They can't even define evidence, and yet they dismiss claims for the supernatural, for belief in God. So somehow he went down this road of saying that, for example, we see a blade of grass blowing. We look through the window, and in the garden we see a blade of grass, blowing in the wind. Do we believe that that blade of grass is there blowing in the wind? And then he makes the point that in order to believe it, we need to know the chemical composition of the grass. We need to know the rate at which the atoms are vibrating and all these things. And I don't really think that's the case. I don't think that in order to accept that a blade of grass is growing, we don't need to know what the chemical composition of that blade of grass is. We can agree that, yeah, that's a blade of grass by our definition. It's moving around in the wind. We can measure that, and we're justified in holding that belief and accepting that claim. I don't know whether any of you guys can hear a sort of beeping that's going on there. It seems that there's a burglar alarm that's gone off outside my building. I don't know if any of you guys can hear it. So he seems to be going down the road of saying that of absolute skepticism, that we can't know anything for certain. Therefore, you might as well believe in God, because it's almost like all beliefs are equal. You can't prove that blade of grass is blowing. You can't actually prove it for various reasons. And okay, so I believe in God. I can't prove it either, but my belief in God is just as justified as your belief that that blade of grass is growing. No, it's not. It's not at all. A blade of grass blowing in the wind is a mundane claim. The belief in an all-powerful, all-knowing being is a remarkable claim. It's going to take much more evidence to convince me that that is true than that mundane everyday things are true. We can hold these positions, I think, with justification, even though we can't be certain on them. But claims for the supernatural and remarkable claims are going to need far more evidence. Remarkable claims require remarkable evidence. Okay, I think that's it for now. I'm going to probably sign off in a couple of minutes. So if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask, thanks for being with me. It's 25 past 25 past 12. So just to tell you briefly what my plans are for my channel, I'm going to be doing 2 videos a week, calls from the line, whether it's Matt or somebody else. I'll be doing 2 calls a week. I'll be doing this live stream, and I don't know whether I'll be doing much else because I'm quite busy at the moment. But yeah, just coming back to, sorry, I just forgot something. Just coming back to the person who said that criticizing atheist positions, trying to undermine atheist skepticism is what a lot of theists do. They will never talk about their own beliefs, and they will never justify their own beliefs. They will focus on trying to expose logical flaws in atheist thinking. Once they've done that, they will then go away laughing like clowns. And when they're challenged to defend their claims, they won't have any of it. They'll just run away, and they'll say, "Oh well, you've got no, your epistemology is so flawed. You're flailing around. Your epistemology is broken. So your disbelief in God is not trustworthy," and they will just disappear. And then when challenged, okay, well, what's your epistemology? And you say you're a theist. Why are you a theist? They won't respond. They'll just run away. And frankly, if somebody's not going to answer the question why they believe in God, what convinced them, then I don't believe that they're really worth talking to, and they're not serious. And they're not qualified to say that my epistemology is broken. Epistemology is no big deal. It really isn't. It's really just about determining what qualifies as being a true belief or not. It's and then as for what evidence is, that's for each and every person to decide what qualifies as evidence. We can argue and discuss that. So it may well be that a theist has got a different epistemology from mine. They might consider, well, my atheist epistemology is broken, yeah, by their standards, because they're allowed to let in, they will let in a lot more than I will. And they might say, well, you can't prove that you exist, and they'll go down the hard solipsism route. You can't prove that reality is real. You can't prove that reason is reasonable. This is somebody who hasn't got good reasons to justify their own beliefs. When people start going down that road and start trying to undermine atheist positions rather than supporting their own, they've already lost. If you have good evidence, if you have good reasons for your own beliefs, you don't attack somebody else and their position. You present your reasons for your beliefs, and you try to persuade the other person that they're good reasons. So I see a lot of this. I see a lot of it all the time. You atheist, you can't even prove that you're real. Ha ha ha. Oh yeah, well, okay, be a clown. Be a clown. Okay. So that's it. I think I'm going to sign off now. Thank you very much for being with me. I'll leave the chat open for a little while longer. And I'll see you next week. I'll see you hopefully next Monday. Cheerio. Goodbye. Have a nice week.